Most attacks don't rely on malware. They use your own tools and applications against you. Bitdefender analyzed 700,000 incidents from their platform and found that 84% of major cases involved living off the land techniques. Joining me to talk about how GravityZone PHASR tackles this challenge are Martin Zugec and James Johnson from Bitdefender. Welcome, Martin and James. Martin, let's start with the threat. Why are LOTL attacks so hard to stop, and why are they growing?
So I would start by saying living off the land attacks are not new. They have been around, but something that we are seeing with all the cybercriminals, as they are getting more professional, more sophisticated, they are actually going away from the fancy tools and they are using less and less tooling until you end up with professionals that are mostly malware free. And they like to copy from each other. So what we are seeing over the last few years is more and more, for example, ransomware groups has been focusing on just using legitimate tools that already exist on the systems instead of bringing any malware. And that is a trend that we've been tracking across all these groups. What makes them hard to detect is it is the same tools that companies, businesses, and administrators are using. So it is not the tool itself that is malicious, it is the intent behind the use of that tool that is malicious, and that is much harder to detect, and it's really hard to prevent for companies because you start running into the conflicts between IT and business when you try to stop these attacks.
James, do you think there is too much reliance on threat detection and response right now in the industry?
Yeah, I do. I think what's happening out in the marketplace is that too many of the big vendor names are sort of pitching that it's just good enough to have detection. By the time the bad guys get in, that's too late. Detection and the response is way too late. So the industry is leaning heavily on these reactive models. What we should be doing is going proactively into the environments and looking for places of vulnerability, apps that could be guided at malicious intent, what we call lay of the land attacks. PHASR is everything is in the name: proactive hardening and attack surface reduction. That means harden the environment, preemptively remove applications that could be used against the organization, take a forward-thinking and proactive means against attackers. The second is the multi-layered threat prevention, which effectively is like having multiple locks on a door, gates, alarm systems, electric fencing. That's the way that you should be protecting an environment. So not just detecting when they're in the house and they're already walking around and helping themselves to all the goods in the house. That incorporates things like a central core environment, like Bitdefender's GravityZone environment, where you have everything controlled in one environment, to control things like preventive hardening, attack surface reduction, which is PHASR, as well as the multi-layered defense in depth solutions that you have deployed. So yeah, definitely.
Now, Martin, this is definitely a crowded market. What makes PHASR different, and how does it protect without blocking tools teams rely on?
So PHASR is actually focused on the area where you cannot find too many solutions, which is the most popular tools that businesses rely on. What PHASR is doing is that it is looking at individual machines and individual users, compare their behavior against the list of known behavior by malicious actors, so the list of the tools and their functionality, and on autopilot it's making recommendations for which tools can be blocked, but also which functionality of the tool can be blocked. So if 90% of the tool functionality is perfectly fine, used for legitimate cases, but there is one feature that is very popular with attackers, and the end user is not using that one functionality, it is going to be blocked. So it's a combination of few different factors that make PHASR effective against this, again, like elephant in the room problem that we ignored for way too long.
Now, Martin, the Bitdefender research was eye-opening. What surprised you the most in the 700,000 incidents the team analyzed?
So that research actually consisted of two parts. We looked at 700,000 security incidents to understand what the threat actors are doing, but we also looked at the data from our telemetry to understand the legitimate use of these tools. And there was quite a lot of highlights and unexpected discoveries for us. If I would highlight two of them, we found quite a lot of differences between different geos. The system administration practices are different in North America, EMEA, APAC. So you cannot have one solution for all of those. You really need to go after individual companies, individual departments, individual users. That was one. The second thing we found is that in many cases, it's actually not administrators that are using these administrative tools. It's different legitimate applications that are deployed on the systems. So even if you would like to block some of these tools because you are not using them, you never know which of the business application has dependency on it, runs it, invisible screen on the background. So that was a big surprise for us when we found tools that we did not expect to see because they have been obsolete for a long time. And there are still many applications that are using them and many attackers as well.
James, what's the channel takeaway? And how can MSPs and partners use PHASR to develop stronger outcomes?
They need to go to the customer market and in their consultancy speak about simplicity and being proactive. So PHASR, again, it's in the name, proactive hardening and attack surface reduction is all about proactively taking a stance, taking the security line away from inside their building or inside their environment to outside their environment, and the tools and techniques and processes that are next generation, but the exploits that are available on the existing environment that they're not looking at. We mentioned PowerShell, or Martin spoke about the evidence that we've collected, things like PowerShell and being able to disrupt those applications. We can do that automatically. So giving advice to customers to take a proactive approach. The second is the integration. So having that integration with a set of tooling that's multi-layered, that has a set of tooling, but also detection capabilities that protect from detection response, automatic remediation, and taking action in one environment, so simplifying. The third is really looking at risk and risky tools and being able to limit the exploitation of those tools and vulnerabilities that exist in the environment. Simplicity is key, but also proactive, looking far out of the environment at the threat actors and what they're doing to gain access and leverage existing exploits on the environment. There's a lot to be done out there, but we can make it simpler with GravityZone and PHASR.
Simpler is definitely the key. Thank you, Martin and James, for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
To learn more or schedule a demo of GravityZone PHASR, visit the website on your screen. For the channel company, I'm Kenna Johnson.